Hello everybody. Today we are going to be building a SlackBot. What is a SlackBot? For those who do not know, so if you've ever used Slack, typically at the bottom of your team window, there is normally an applications tab. This is a SlackBot. So this is a to-do bot. You can see here I can actually create tasks. Like here I was gonna be moving a domain to AWS and stuff, right? This is a SlackBot. So I communicate with it, it gives me back information. We're gonna be building one of these guys. First things first, where do we get information on how to do one of these guys? It is really well documented. Slack has done a good job of putting everything you need out there on their homepage. If you Google Slack API, you're taken for the most part to this page, and here you can see the methods that they have implemented. They have almost everything available for you to use, so it's fairly easy to do this. We're going to be using Python, and for Python we'll use the Slack Python developer kit, and we'll install that using pip. I'm going to show you how to do this in this video on a Mac. And then in subsequent videos, I'm going to show you how to make this a lot more portable. So the first thing is to go ahead and install this Slack client. And let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to launch a terminal window. So let's move this guy down here. Come on. There you go. I've got on a prompt. First thing is to do pip install Slack client. You may need to sudo if you don't have rights, and it looks like I have it already installed. If you don't have it, it's going to go ahead and go through the install process. That's the first thing. Second thing is I'm going to open Atom. This is my go-to editor. And here you're going to see two files. I've got test_slack_bot.py. And I also have slack_bot.py. I'm building this application using test-driven development, where I first write the tests and then I write my code. But before I do that, I want to show you something. So we just installed the Python. We just installed the Python SDK. So we're going to go ahead and import the Slack client. And we're going to import the Slack client. We'll go ahead and create an object called Slack client. I love the naming, by the way. So we're going to go and create an object. It's going to be called Slack_client from this class we just imported. And what I want to do is I want to show you some of the methods we get from that this object has access to from this class. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll print the help on this this object. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm using in Atom. So this is my editor. I'm using the package scripts. You can go ahead and look at it. It allows you to run code in Atom. As you can see there. So I'm not doing any magic. And when I hit enter, I get this being executed in the IDE, and it prints the help for the Slack client object. And we can see the methods that it inherits from the Slack client class. So let's go back here. So we have the class Slack client, and you can see that the Slack client takes one argument, which is a token, and this token is what is used to actually communicate with Slack. You can get it. They have some good information there that tells you where to go generate your Slack token, and this token is thrown into the init as one of the parameters, and that's used to initiate the object. And then we have the API call method, We have the RTM connect method. We'll use this a lot. This is just used to make sure that we can actually connect to the RTM WebSocket, and I'll show you how we use that. We have the RTM read. So this is actually a really important one. What it does is it reads from the RTM WebSocket stream from Slack, and we can set a timeout window on when that's pulled, and it returns a list. And this list has, for the most part, all the events that are happening on the user screen. So as they type, we'll see the user who's typing, whether they're active or not, when they change their presence, the message that they put in there. And we can take those message, the message in the channel, and use that to trigger events. And we can also take that information, which would be the channel and the user, and we can send it back through the RTM send method, which is the other method we're going to be using. And that takes the channel as one argument, the message, which is what ends up being printed out on the screen. And the user can actually get a response back. So we'll be using all these methods here. And we'll see how that looks like. So let's go ahead and start by first writing our first test. So the first thing we'll do is to write a test to just make sure we can talk to the Slack API. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import, I'm going to create a function, def Slack connect, actually. Let's go give it the name test Slack connect. You do need to have the name test for it to run. And normally, if you've ever used PyTest, most people use a SAT. That's pretty much kind of the standard way. And the way this works is you SAT, which is to check that the function that you're trying to write has this value. I actually tend to use print a lot, and especially when I've not written the function yet, because I want to see actually the output from my test runs. So that's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to say print Slack connect, then we're just going to call that guy. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and import the SlackBot. So this main function, this main program into my test, and I'm going to import everything. So from this program, I want to import all the functions that are available to me. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now I do need to create a SlackBot. As you saw in the function, the first argument in the object is actually in the class, when we're initiating the class, is actually the Slack token. So we need to create that. So Slack client is equal to Slack client and then token. So let's see. So the token comes from here. So if you go and Google Slack client token, enter, it should take you to the token API, and I can go ahead and do a bot user, and down here I should be able to create a new bot user, and I'm gonna call this guy my awesome bot, and then add the integration for it, and this should give me a token that I can use. And I'm gonna scroll down here and hit save, very important, and I'm gonna go back to my IDE and replace this token with the new token I just created. Okay, so let's write our first function. So function is def Slack connect. It's a Python function, and all it's doing is it's returning just the Slack client object calling the Slack RTM connect method. That's it. And there are two ways of running PY tests. First way of doing this, actually we don't need this. The first way of doing this is by issuing it from the IDE. There's a plugin for Atom, of course there is. But the other way of doing it is from command line. I do prefer the command line because it's a little bit more verbose. And the syntax is python-m-pytest because I'm using Python 2.7, and then -v for verbose, and I'm issuing it against this file, which is this file. And when I issue the command, I see that it's connecting and it printed out true. Okay, perfect. So what I can do now is I can come and say assert that this is gonna return true. Perfect. First, okay. Next step is we're going to go ahead and write another function. And actually, let's first write the test. This is gonna be the Slack read RTM function. And again, here I also want to print, and this is gonna be Slack RTM read, and this is going to be our function here. And so we're going to take the RTM read, and this time around what we're going to do is we're going to return Slack client dot RTM read. So pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and run that. Oh, okay, I noticed something. We had a typo here. That's printing out. Let's try it again. Okay, so we see we get an empty list. What we want to do is we want to run this in a loop so that it continuously pulls the client, our awesome bot client, so that as we type stuff in here, it shows up and we can be able to pass it. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert this into a loop, and it's going to be a while loop. While true, we're going to go ahead and print this output, and we're going to go ahead and print the Slack client, what it's reading, and then we're going to sleep for 1 second. And to make this work, I need to import time. And now when we come here and run this, what I should see if I am able to connect to the Slack client is actually initiate a connection with my Slack client. And if I come here and start typing text, you can see that this is being read. The user is typing, and anything I put in here shows up as the message. So I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to kick this off again, and I want to show you something. So if I come in and issue test, okay, it's going to connect, and we have our empty array, it's connected, and I'm going to start typing text here. So I want to show you something. So my bot is called my awesome bot, and if I issue a test, my awesome bot, I'm now communicating directly to the bot, and I issue a command test01 and my awesome bot test02. I'm gonna kill this. I want you to notice something. So the first thing is my bot has a user ID. and this is the user ID. And the message that I put in here, test 01 and test 02, these are the messages. This is all coming in this array. This array here, this is the first one that has the message, channel, user, and this is the user ID. Same thing here. So I can actually write a function that takes this input, filters out for just these messages using the user ID, and returns this message so I can take action on it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and skip the reading from Slack for now, and to do that I'm going to go and do import pytest, and I'm going to say add pytest. This is a decorator, mark.skip, and this is for another video. Just believe this is gonna work, and I'm gonna say not fully implemented. And what I'm doing here is I'm just gonna skip this calling of this function for now. I'll come back to this in a few minutes. And if I issue this, this should connect and then skip the RTM, but it does run the connect. Second thing I'm going to do is, because I want to go ahead and write a test that takes this input, which is what's going to be read from my the Slack RTM function. I want to take this and pass and extract out whatever command I put in, and also give me the channel and the what's that thing? So the command, the channel, and the user. So I'm gonna take this input, and I'm gonna create a variable here called input, and let me move this guy to the side. I'm gonna take that and assign it to a variable, and I'm going to write a new test, and that test is going to be def test pass Slack input, and it's going to be testing a new function that I'm going to write called pass Slack input, which is going to take this input as an array, and it should return another array that just has the channel, the user, and the message, which is going to be test02 in our case, and channel, which in our case here is this guy, right? Okay, so what I'm doing here is I have a test that takes this input. This function will just take this input, and this is all it's going to return, and it should only pass if this is able to return successfully. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, the other one thing I want to do is I want to say that it also takes the bot user ID, which I'll write another function to pull out and extract. Once we're done writing our test, the next thing is to write the function, and this is going to be the pass Slack input function. It's going to take two variables. One of them is input, and the second one will be the bot ID. And we need to go ahead and create that variable, and we're going to call it bot at ID, and it's going to be this. So we'll do this, and this, and then this will be the plus bot ID. So that's our bot ID. We'll come and evaluate the input, and we'll do that using an if condition. If input and length of input is greater than 0, if this is true and there is something inside the input, we'll take the first element of input because we get it as an array, and then pass that element. So see, this is a list. We want to take this element, and then we'll say if text in input. So if this value exists and bot ID in input text, then do something, which means someone has actually typed something in and there is a message, do something. And what that doing is assigning the user, which is just input user, assigning the message, which is input text, and what happens is this would evaluate to these two elements. So what we'll do is we'll split at bot ID, which is represented by bot ID, and what that will do is will give us two elements. I'll take the second element because I'm interested in the actual message, and that's 1, and then I'll strip all the white space because I'll get some white space, and that's my message. And then the last thing is channel, which is just channel. And then I'll return a list of all these elements, and they are in Unicode. They come back in Unicode, so with the U. So what I need to do is convert them into strings, and the way I do that is just say string user, string message, and string channel. And then I'll do else return an array of none, none, none. There you go. And the last thing we'll do is to run our tests, and what we're just testing is to make sure that pass slacked with this input, which is the user ID, and this input, it will return for us the user message and time channel. Okay, let's go ahead and run that, and the test passed. Okay, cool. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go and write a test that gives us this bot ID, and it should be pretty simple. So it's gonna be test get bot ID, and it will test a function called get bot ID, and this takes one variable. In our case, it's going to be my awesome bot, and it's going to assert that this guy returns a string, which is the bot ID. And to do that, we'll use this Slack API call. So if you were to go Google Slack API call users list, so this is a users list method. We'll be using this method, and all it does is, so you make an API call to Slack, and Slack will return for you a list of all the members. So this is what we are after, and we will pass in the name, which is the real name, which is this, and in this example here it's Spangler, and we'll make sure that the account has not been deleted. So we'll do those two things, and if we meet that requirement, then we'll return the bot ID. Okay, let's get started. So the function is called def get bot ID, and it takes a variable called bot username, and we'll make an API call and store it in this function called API call, and it's going to be Slack client.api call, and we'll ask it to return as the user. We'll run the method users.list, and from the API call we'll grab all the users, and they'll come from API call members. So we're just filtering out the members. That's this guy. So for the for loop, we'll say for user in users, and that will iterate through this user with each entry being users. We'll say if name in user, if this is actually true, if name exists in this, so we need to make sure that's there, and bot username in user.get name. So we want to just check to see whether our bot name is actually in this entry, right? And not user.get deleted. So what you're doing here is we are trying to evaluate to make sure that this evaluates as false. If deleted is true, then skip. Then return user.get ID. Okay, and if we run this, okay, there it passes. So what you've done here is we've been able to successfully return this. The next function we'll write is the write back to Slack function. We've not been doing that so far, so let's go ahead and do write the test write to Slack. And what we'll do here is a start write to Slack, which will take several parameters. One of them will be the channel, and the next will be the message. And the channel will be this guy, and the message will be testing writing to Slack. Okay, so let's write the function. So we'll do def write to Slack, and we'll take in the channel and the message, and we'll make this API call, which is return Slack client API call. And the way this works is, so if you come here and you do chat.post message, so this is how you write back to Slack. You supply it with your message and the channel text. There are two ways of doing this. You can write it in a formatted input, or you can just use plain old text. If you want to do anything fancy, you have to use attachments. I'll go through that later. and the output is okay, true, and then the message is posted. The response, this is the JSON response. So let's go ahead and use that. We'll use this to verify that the message has actually been posted. So if we come back here and we do a search right to Slack, and we'll be searching for OK to make sure that it returns true. Okay, so API call, and we're using the chat post message, and we'll provide the channel, and we'll provide text equal to message. And the last thing we'll do, we'll say as user is equal to true. What at user is equal to true does, user as user, it makes sure that the message is sent out as an authenticated user and not as a bot. So I'm just setting that as true so that it always comes from a particular user. So that's pretty much it. Let's look at this. This actually is text, so let's change that. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see what we get back. Okay, it looks like I have a typo. Right to Slack. Yeah, lowercase. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, and it looks like it sent out the message test writing to Slack, and that's the same message, test writing to Slack. Okay, so the last part of this program is to convert this into a class, and we'll call the class Slack communication, and I'm going to inherit the object. I'm using Python, the Python built-in object. I'm using Python 2.7, and this allows me to use new world Python classes. So once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and write my first init, and to do that I'll do def init, this will take self, and I'm going to instantiate these two variables. Okay, and to do that I just mark them as self, and I will, each and every single method has to take self, and since this is being created by it's being instantiated as a class, as a instance variable, I'll also need to mark it as self. So same thing here, and this also needs to take self. Same thing, this should be okay. Self and self. Then in each class, each method I need to put in self as the first variable, as the first parameter. Okay. So the next step here is we'll go ahead and make changes to the tests module so that we can be able to test the new class. And we'll do that by using, I'm going to take the import out, and then what I'm going to do is I'll make all this work by using the PyTest decorator fixture, and I'll create a new class, and I'll call it Slack communication, and what it will do, it will import from SlackBot, import this class, and then I'm going to do return this class initiated. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this new method I've created and I'll push it into each and every single one of my functions, actually each and every single one of my test functions that are actually referencing a method in this class. And I'm just going to go ahead and push this here, so each function will take that as a parameter, and then they will call the method from this class. And same here, call the method from that class, call the method from that class, and then call the method from that class. What I've done is I've created a PyTest fixtures function, and that function is taking the class and then returning the class initiated, and then I'm passing the instantiated class as a parameter in each and every single function that I have, and then I'm using that to call the specific method that I need tested, right? So this should work. Let's go ahead and run this, and if I run the test, some tests were skipped, so let me fix that. I want to test everything, including the not fully implemented one. So you can see that my tests are passing, right? And I do have one failed, and if I look here at the failed, this is the RTM. It's one that's not fully implemented, RTM. And the reason it's failing, PyTest is telling me I do not have the read attribute, and I get this by first initiating a connect, which is this method here. So let's go ahead and implement that here. So if I do Slack communication dot Slack connect, so that should work. And I'm gonna move this at the end of all my tests, because what this does, it's actually running a while loop, so it's going to hold the command, and I want to have all my tests completed before I do that. So let's go ahead and run this again. You can see my tests are passing, and yes, it held. And I now have communication with the SlackBot. In the next part of this application, we are going to write a new class, and this class is going to tie everything together and make the calls to these methods to have one complete application. So to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a couple of tests, and it's actually two tests, and I'm gonna call this test to decide whether to take action, and the first one will be called none, and then here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have an input which is equal to this. So that's the user message channel. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to assert that decide function taking the input is true, and then I'm going to write the same thing again, but this time actually this will be message and this will be none. This time I'll do none. Actually, let's copy this. This time I'll do none. an array full of none. There you go. Okay, and I'm gonna be doing this on a new class, so I need to write a new fixture. So I'll say add pytest fixture, and then I'm gonna call this new class main function, and then I'm gonna say from SlackBot import main function, and I'm going to return this main function initialized, and I'm going to take this guy and feed it into this, and then I'm gonna call this method. So same as before. So simple enough. So let's go ahead and write on. This is going a new class. So this new class is going to be called class main function, and it's going to inherit all this. And I'm going to have an init. It's going to take self as before. And then here what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the super to copy all the init from the first function, the class I'm inheriting from, and this is the syntax. And then one more thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to add excuse me, I'm going to add a new variable called bot ID, and this is going to take self dot get bot ID, which takes a username, and this username is this guy. So it's going to take same awesome bot and it should assign it to self bot ID. So that's pretty much it. And then I'm going to write this new function of ours here, and this function, what it's going to do is it's going to take the input, and based on whether it's which it's gonna get from this entry here, and based on whether it actually returns a value or whether it's none, it's going to take action, and the action it's going to take is actually just write back to Slack. So where is this? It's going to write to Slack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if input, so if this is true, what I want you to do is assign user message and channel from the past Slack input. Actually input from input, because this is coming in as an array, because it's going to be getting its value from this guy. And then I want you to write this out. So return write to Slack, and because this is inside the object, it's write to Slack, and I want write to Slack takes channel and message. So I'm just going to copy that, channel and message, and then else I want you to do nothing, so I'm just going to leave else nothing. So let's go ahead and test this out. So let's go ahead and test this out and see what we get. Okay, these are the old tests, and you saw it wrote the first time, and it wrote the second time, which was test 02, which is our test here. Next, we'll write a run function for the main function, and we'll call it run, and it looks self as a variable, And then the first thing we'll do is we'll connect to Slack by calling this function Slack connect. Next, we'll create a new variable called bot ID, and we'll create this from the getBot function. And this takes one parameter, which is the username, and the username is stored under the app name. Next, we'll write a loop, and this loop will just pull and call this function, which is decide whether to take action or not, and then sleep for 1 minute and try it again. So to finish this out, so the decide to take action takes an input, which is actually the pass Slack input. And again, since this is coming from an object, we need to allocate self. The pass input takes a couple of variables, and the first one is the Slack RTM, which is just takes itself, doesn't take any variables, and the second parameter is the bot ID. So that's pretty much it. So while true, decide whether to take function or whether to take action. So the last thing we'll do is we'll create, we'll call everything here, and how we'll do this, we'll say if name is equal to main, and this just makes sure we are running in the main function. I'm going to instantiate an object, and I'll call that main function. And just call it instance is equal to main function. Oops, daisy. And then I'm gonna say instance dot run. Okay, so we're actually good to go. Now we can actually call this now and see whether we get any input. So I'm gonna say python slackbot.py. Ooh, I have a typo there, and this is a comparison, not an equals. Okay, let's try it again, and it looks like it's running. So let's come here. Yep, and I can see my bot is running, and if I come and say add my awesome bot, my first message, add my awesome bot, this is very cool. You can see it's taking my input and it's actually pushing it back to me, right? So, and this is what we wanted to do. So yeah, so that's how you pretty much write a SlackBot. Now this is pretty straightforward. All I'm having this bot do is write back to Slack, but I could do anything here. I could call another function, I could make things happen, like to power on virtual machines, I want you to power on lights in room. I can pretty much do almost anything here. This is just illustrate to you how easy it is to write a SlackBot. So yeah, so that's it. Thanks for watching.